Okay, so now that we have sewn our pleats, we do need to arrange our skirt portion on our avatar. It is already in my view strengthened, so I'm going to move it up close to her skirt area. Try not to go cutting into her thighs. And I can see that it's going to run into her hands. And so we can go ahead and freeze all of our pieces. I'm going to highlight them all in my 2D window. And I'm going to right click on my 3D to freeze everything so that I can raise her arms. And I'm going to go to just the A pose. It's a little bit higher. Okay. And so I do want to keep my yoke frozen. So I can click off and then click on my skirt portion specifically to unfreeze. I want to keep it strengthened. And I have not sewn the side seams of this skirt part together yet. It makes the simulation a little bit easier. And so I'm going to go ahead now and simulate that. And it looks reasonable. I can actually sew those end seams now if I prefer. I can do that now. So side seam to side seam, making sure it doesn't cross over. Okay, but when I unfreeze my yoke section, you'll see that it does gather it in a way that's incorrect. I'm going to unstrengthen this too. Okay, so I should not be seeing any gathering here on my skirt, but I am. And independently, Stacy, Annie, and I came to the same realization, which is that the sewing of our pleats is not correct, and it's causing problems with our pleats. So let's investigate the sewing a little bit further, and I'll show you what's going wrong. And I can show you how to fix it. It's not a great fix, and it takes some time, but it will make our outcome a lot better. So if we investigate the sewing relationship of all of our pleats, we can see that our yoke is attached to our pleats in these segments. And this segment is the spacing between our pleats, the part that's visible on top. And then if we go in further, each of our pleats is sewn here to itself. So this part of the pleat is sewn to this part with this purple relationship here. There is another sewing relationship, which is this blue one, that is trying to sew this half of the pleat to the pleat spacing area. And because those don't match up in length, it's giving an error. Essentially, it's trying to gather in this section here to fit the pleat spacing there. And so what we need to do actually is go through and delete all of those relationships. So I'm going to go through. So I click on the sewing relationship between the pleats. I get that blue one at the top, and I'm going to delete it. Okay. I'm going to go to the next set of 2 pleats, highlight that relationship, find the one that's not good, which is that blue one up there, and delete it. And I'm going to go through and do that for all 20 of my pleats. I'll try to do it quickly. And so I find that if I click on the 2 halves of my pleat fold, it'll bring the 2 relationships up, and it's the one that's on top that I want to delete, but do double check that when you're doing it on your own. But you can kind of get into a rhythm if you know which one you're aiming for. Ideally, we would keep this relationship because it's sewing essentially the part of the pleats to itself that helps stabilize our skirt. It should be fine for what we're doing, but there is a way to sew it properly. It just takes additional work, which is not a big deal, but be aware of that. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, so now what we have is just the relationship of it sewing to the skirt and sewing the pleat to itself. So now if we go back to our 3D window. We revised all of those pleat relationship sewing lines. And now if we simulate it, it should look better, but sometimes it has a hard time reconfiguring sew lines. So if we reset the 3D arrangement, strengthen it again. Again, I've got that I made the sew line between my side seams. I might delete that just to make it easier on myself. And then I also want to freeze my yoke again. And now when I simulate it, it should look a lot better. Okay, let that calm down in the back a bit. You can start to see how it might be problematic to have those sewing lines removed, relationships removed, and we can look into that a bit more. But for the time being, this solves part of our problem. I'm going to sew those closed. Okay, and now when I unfreeze my yoke section, you can see that my pleats do not gather in. Part of what I'm seeing though is that this area here, it's kind of the pleat has fallen out because it's not sewn to itself. So if you want to do some extra work there, you can see my blue dot should be there. I'm looking at this pleat here. What we can do is add a point here, which is halfway between my my overlay area. I'm going to make that 1 inch. And now I'm going to do a sewing relationship where I sew this to this. Okay, and that'll actually fix that problem. Okay, so there is a way, you just need to define a new segment. Like this pleat is also bad. It's kind of falling. I'm going to add a point between my two sections here. And then define a new sewing relationship where I'm going to do kind of the opposite there. Go not facing each other, not in the same direction. And it's going to fix up that pleat there. Should do. And again, if you have to reset your 3D arrangement, that sometimes helps. Okay, so that's one way we can fix it. It's obviously not a great fix, but that does solve some of our problems. And now if we unstrengthen this, it looks a little bit better. We've got a little tennis skirt going now.